In a very few minutes, you'll find out a lot more about the background of Leigh Harder. I want to say, as a little introduction, that Leigh and I are in the Otter Creek Poets Workshop here in Middlebury, Vermont. And that's how I know Leigh. And Leigh is a multi-talented person in several different creative categories. And she's very, very generous in sharing her knowledge with the community. So she's going to tell you more about her background and then get into her subject, the creative mind. So Leigh, thank you.
Thank you very much. I really am pleased to be here with you. And I was listening to Ashley talk about creative minds and the power of being together with other people who are creative. I have put together a slideshow, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen right now with you. And um, hmm. Are you seeing something that looks like the creative mind?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, good. Excellent. Okay. So I want to tell you a little bit more about who I am and what my background is. Long ago, I got my bachelor's degree in human creativity. It was an independent major from a liberal arts college, and it closely connects, my wanting to get a degree in human creativity closely connects to my beliefs about creativity, that everyone is in fact creative, inherently creative. We express it in different ways. Pivotal to the research I did in my undergraduate studies was the work of Abraham Maslow. And I'm going to share some of the content in just a moment with you. Before I go on, can everybody please make sure you have some paper in front of you and a pen or a pencil? So I have been a visual artist and a writer, oh my goodness, for probably since I was 5 or 6 years old. I remember in kindergarten when the teacher said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A painter," without even thinking twice. Life has a way of carrying on. So I actually became an elementary teacher. I went back to school after we had moved from the Philadelphia area to Vermont with 4 children under the age of 10, and decided that was a good time to get my degree in teaching. So I was a teacher for many years in elementary, and then I went on to do a grad class, to teach a grad class. I have been in the past a curriculum designer. I have worked on interactive, multimodal, multi-generation approaches to learning. I taught middle school English at a private school for a period of time. I have done elementary for many years, integrating the arts into my classroom. And then I went on to do a graduate course, and I got a degree in literacy as a literacy specialist as well. I have my master's degree in educational leadership, and all of these things have actually served me very well in the different things I've done in life. I am actively a visual artist at this point. I'm showing you a painting of sunflowers and cardinal flowers. This was a commissioned piece for a friend of mine. Mountain Mint is at the beginning. I'm an avid gardener as well. In Vermont, we've had a big push in response to environmental challenges towards growing native plants in our area. So the painting you see, what looks like it's on the left, is all of native plants. The painting on the right is horsetail, which is a native plant as well, and a picture of, I think it's autumn leaves in the fall. So for me to share with you some of my thoughts about the creative mind, I wanted to take just a minute to go through Maslow's theory of self-actualization. He was a social psychologist and um, highly regarded for a long time. As we've gone on in time with society and culture, it looks quite linear, and this is not actually linear. It's a model to understand kind of how human beings work. And I just want to, this is pivotal to my understanding of the creative mind and creativity. So, for all human beings, the physiological needs come first. Basic survival needs, breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis. And homeostasis is just a big word for balance and excretion. So, the very basic physical needs have to happen first. Immediately above that is safety, that we can't do much until we have our needs met and we feel safe. So we're feeling safe in our employment, our sources of revenue, resources, morality, the family, health, and property. After that, and remember, he set it up in a linear way. We don't need to be quite so linear about it. But after that, we look for our love and belonging needs to be met, friendship, family, sexual intimacy, esteem, self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect from others and ourselves. And this is something that, especially if you've been involved with mindfulness and being present, meditation, we've been paying a lot of attention as a culture to self-esteem and respecting ourselves, especially. This is the part, the apex of the triangle, that I got really excited about, self-actualization. And that term has been popped around a lot in our society, our culture, I would say, during the last 20 years. But this is where a lot of good stuff happens, in my opinion. So creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, a sense of morality, and acceptance of facts. So as we look more closely at the creative process and the creative mind, all of these things come to play. So as Maslow was putting at the very top of this triangle, all of these things, spontaneity is integrally tied with creativity. For those of you who have been creative people for a long time, you know that you have to have a certain amount of spontaneity and even flow to really get into a lot of times what is a problem-solving process, whether it's a poem, a piece of prose, an article, dance, music, science, any of the areas of creativity. And I will be having a Q&A at the end of this, so I know I'm giving you a lot of information. Before I share with you other people's ideas of creativity, I'd like you to take a minute. We'll take like literally 2 minutes and jot down, what do you think creativity is? Just give me a thumbs up when you feel like you have a little definition. So just take another minute or so, and I'm going to carry on. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you some definitions of creativity. And I'm not going to ask that you read your definition out to the group right now, but just take a look at your definition and compare it to some of these. I like this quote from Psychology Today, and this was an online reference. Creativity encompasses the ability to discover new and original ideas, connections, and solutions to problems. It is part of our drive as humans, fostering resilience, sparking joy, and providing opportunities for self-actualization. So if you think about what I referenced to you, the Maslow triangle, the pyramid, that whole idea of self-actualization, there's something tremendously satisfying about the creative process. Other definitions, this is from California State University. Creativity is defined as the tendency to generate or recognize ideas, alternatives, or possibilities that may be useful in solving problems, communicating with others, and entertaining ourselves or others. So before we get into the creative mind, thinking about what is creativity is really important. And I'd love for you to, if you can, just underline any commonalities you had in your own definition with what I just shared. A man who has been long regarded as an expert in the field of creativity is, and I practiced saying his name so I could pronounce it correctly, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He was a Hungarian social scientist. You probably have heard of flow state. He was the author of the book Flow State, but he did a great deal of research in creativity and then went on. I've got the cover of this book, which is, I think, a 2018 publication. He continued to delve into creativity. And this book, Creativity, the Psychology of Discovery and Invention, incorporates a lot of his early research on creativity, but then he's gone on and expanded it even more. So much of what I'm going to be sharing with you is based on Mihai's work. And I'll go ahead and get into this. He defined creativity as any act, idea, or product that changes an existing domain into a new one. This is a really, really important idea. He interviewed, I think it was over 1,000 people who were very, very important minds and creatives in specific domains. When I talk about a domain, I'm talking about the visual arts or literature, science, medicine, engineering, technology. He then goes on to talk about how the creative person, is someone whose thoughts or actions change that domain. He went on to say creativity is jointly constituted by the interaction among domain, field, and the person himself. The trait of personal creativity helps to generate novelty that will actually lead to change. Domain would be the really big category. And when Mihai talks about field, he's talking about the specific area. So if it was visual arts, the field might be as an oil painter or as a watercolor painter. If he's talking about medicine, it might be getting into a specific field. So those two big ideas, domain and field, are really, really important when we look at like the big, like Steve Jobs and the really pivotal people in creativity. I had so much fun looking into this, thinking about the creative mind and who this person is. So we're going to take a look at a series of descriptors of creative minds, creative people. What did he find, Mihai, excuse me, when he did his research? What did he discover? As we often think about creative individuals and the creative mind, we have sort of a romantic idea of a dark, brooding, disturbed person. I was fascinated to find that that is a romantic sort of myth. That in fact, when we look at the research, creative people and the creative mind is strangely healthy and robust. So I'm going to be going through these. I want to read through the list, but then we'll take some time to talk about each of them. So the first descriptor is the creative person is energetic and calm, divergent yet convergent thinker, disciplined and playful, realistic but imaginative, introverted as well as extroverted, humble and proud. I'm going to be very careful with the seventh one, thinking about how society has traditionally thought of masculine and feminine traits. So that's really sort of a nod to another time, but traditionally embodying both masculine and feminine traits. The creative mind has both a sense of, well, actually real mastery, and they also hold beginner's mind. They're passionate yet distant, suffering yet exultant. Creative individuals have a great deal of physical energy, but they're also often quiet and at rest. It does not mean that creative persons are hyperactive necessarily, that they're always on, constantly churning away. In fact, they often take rests and sleep a lot. The important thing is that their energy is under their own control. So this whole idea that creative people, they kind of live passionately. When they're on, they're really on. When they're resting, they're fully resting. And both states are very important. Creative individuals tend to be smart. They're also naive at the same time. They are convergent and divergent thinkers. They balance definite answers. So that's the convergent part. So they've done their research, they have their facts, but they can also, they're quite comfortable with open-ended thinking. And that's the divergent part. They can go out of the box. They can bring other ideas into whatever puzzle or problem they're trying to solve. They generally have a strong sense of intuition about whether a problem is solvable or not, and they tend to be very efficient. So I was mentioning such things as the domain and the field, creative minds, and I'm talking about like the truly exceptional creative minds, they have spent a lot of time learning the skills of that area, of that domain, that field. So they do have a sense of mastery. This sense of mastery helps them to know they can use their time efficiently. They know if they're going down the wrong branch, down the wrong alley, and they can throw away something. They can stop a painting midstream, like this is not working, or a poem or a piece of prose. I'm backing myself into a corner. I'm going to throw it away and start again. That ability to stand back and make decisions about the piece, it's very important. So creative individuals have both a sense of fantasy, imagination, along with a sense of reality. They can hold the past and the present at the same time. And I thought it was very interesting, this whole thing idea. Most of us assume that artists, musicians, writers, poets, painters are strong on the fantasy side. Whereas scientists, politicians, and business people are realists. This may be true in terms of day-to-day routine activities, but when a person starts to work creatively in any of those domains, all bets are off. The artist may be just as much of a realist as the physicist as imaginative as the artist. So that's kind of something that we have societally gotten wrong. There are tremendously creative technical people. There are tremendously creative scientists and doctors, people in the field of medicine, as well as very logically minded artists, painters, poets, prose writers. So extroversion, we typically, excuse me, think of how outgoing someone is. Introversion, someone being very shy. Creative people seem to hold both qualities. So there's a whole lot of, in this list of paradoxes, both and. Creative people are both introverted and extroverted simultaneously. They need time, they must have time to work alone in their domain and their field, but they also must have feedback from others in the field. You're not going to go very far without staying abreast of what's current and being able to receive feedback about your own work. As I was researching for this presentation today, it was really interesting to me how a certain amount of creativity is really locked into the time you find yourself in. And that spoke to me as a visual artist, because if I do my work, but I'm not paying attention to what else is going on, it may not have anything to say to the people of this time. So creative minds, not only are they introverted and extroverted, they're fairly well balanced, and they always have at least a small cadre of people, just like your writers group, that you can talk to and share ideas with, bounce ideas around. But they're also aware of how people are expressing themselves at the time. I liked this one a lot. Creative individuals are both playful and disciplined. This is going to get into a little bit more of what I'm going to talk about with beginner's mind and a sense of play. So there's no question that a playfully light attitude is typical of creative individuals, but the playfulness doesn't go very far without its antithesis, a quality of doggedness, endurance, perseverance. And that was from the book that I've been referencing. So it's, again, it's having both at the same time. We talked about being very energetic, very hardworking, but also you can rest well. You can go on vacation and fully enjoy that vacation. Also, it's being both playful, kind of having a go with certain things and not being too hard on yourself. But then when you've found what it is you're working on, you're doing it very intentionally and in a very focused way. There's a balance of humility and pride. They're both humble and proud at the same time. Most creative people have a sense of modesty about their accomplishments, along with an understanding that luck has also played a role. They happen to be in the right place at the right time with the right people. This is held with a sense of self-assurance and confidence in their skills and knowledge. So that's also looking back at this whole idea of mastery. These people, truly creative pioneers in different fields, they've done their time. They've studied hard. They've worked under masters. They've put in a lot of focus, a lot of hard work, and they genuinely know they have much more to learn, but they also feel good, like a healthy pride in what they've done, what they've accomplished. So I want to be very, very careful with how I describe this. And I would say that Mihai was definitely reflecting the times in which he wrote this. We can often still look back in our society at a time when we said, oh, that was a very feminine thing to do, or say that was a very masculine thing. Mihai talks about creative people for a long period of time. So we look back at creative minds hundreds of years ago, as well as in contemporary society. They hold kind of both characteristics and both traits. And I'm not talking about their sexual orientation, but the fact that they are almost androgynous. They can be very compliant, but also very bold simultaneously. They can be very curious and very aggressive at times, but then also sort of shy and withdrawn. So any of the ways that we have traditionally thought of male and female, creative minds, creative people tend to embody both. Mastery and beginner's mind. Creative people balance mastery in a specific domain with the ability to go beyond it. There's simultaneously traditionalists and rebels. There's a willingness to take risks and to think out of the box. They don't aim to be different, merely to be different. So this whole idea of knowing something well and being very familiar with it in order to make it even better. Creative people are passionate about their work, but they also maintain a sense of objectivity about what they're doing. And I think I mentioned that a little bit before, with that sense of efficiency, that there's this almost intuitive ability to decide I'm on the right track, I need to keep going with this, or nope, I'm not going to waste my time with it. Without the passion, we soon lose interest in a difficult task. Yet, without being objective about it, our work is not very good and lacks credibility. The creative process tends to be a yin-yang alternation. So it's both. It's having the passion, but it's also subjectivity and also having objectivity. And I'm sure many of you have been in writing groups for a long time. I have myself. And it's interesting sometimes when you're in a writing group, when people give feedback, it's sometimes the person who's doing the sharing isn't open to that feedback. And that's important. It's a very, very important part of the creative process. So being able to do both at the same time. I found this description really interesting. They're exultant and suffering. Creative people must be open and sensitive. Being open and sensitive causes suffering and may cause hardship, as well as joy and satisfaction. Ever since the Romantic movement gained ascendance a few centuries ago, artists have been expected to suffer in order to demonstrate the sensitivity of their souls. And my daughter is a sculptor. She's an artist and has an MFA. And I remember having a fairly passionate conversation with her in which she said, no, everyone who's a true artist or real artist has to be a little off. They have to suffer. They have to have kind of this dark personality. And I said, no, I do not think that's true. So I was really kind of interested in thinking more deeply about this. The fact that all creative people are inherently sensitive, and they must be inherently sensitive to do what they're doing well. You have to be open to the full life experience. It probably will cause some hardships and suffering, but great joy as well. So I want to get into just a little bit of flow state. Mihai was the man who came up with the idea of flow state. And for many of us who have been involved with writing and with painting, other areas of the arts, music, you may even be able to relate to this personally. I want to read this. It's from Wikipedia, but I want to go ahead and read it out to you. Flow in positive psychology, also known colloquially as being in the zone or locked in, is the mental state in which a person performing some activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus. And if you're taking notes at all, that's what I'd like you really to be thinking about: energized focus, full involvement and enjoyment in the process of the activity. In essence, flow is characterized by the complete absorption in what one does and a resulting transformation in one's sense of time. Transformation for me is something that I can definitely connect to, that when I'm immersed in either writing or painting and really immersed in it, really in the flow state, like hours can go by and I'm sort of unaware of it. Flow is the melting together of action and consciousness, the state of finding a balance between a skill and how challenging that task is. It requires a high level of concentration. Flow is used as a coping skill for stress and anxiety when productively pursuing a form of leisure that matches one's skill set. I'm currently just wrapping up a class that I've been teaching in the Middlebury community called Let's Play. And the class has consisted, it's been a 9-week program, 5 weeks of doing visual art and focusing on alcohol ink painting, and then 4 weeks of writing poetry. This class was open to all levels, and I ended up surprisingly with some people who were expert painters coming into the class and some people who had not painted or written before. So I wanted to take on this idea of play and beginner's mind. It's really important. It relates to the creative process. Creativity can be easily shut down by shame, a sense of judgment, and expectation. A fixed mindset defines things in a binary way, a right and wrong, or black and white, or good and bad way. A growth mindset allows for play and the right to make mistakes as growth takes place. This is connected to a sense of play. So if you have, especially if you have grandchildren or young children in your life, it's really, really, really important to play with them. But it's also important for yourself, especially if you're learning a new skill or trying a new medium or trying a new genre in your writing. Let yourself make mistakes and don't shut yourself down. Don't judge what you're doing. So that sense of play and that sense of beginner's mind is having a certain amount of humility, which is a Zen Buddhist stance of openness and humility. Like, I'm still learning. I might be very good at something, and I may have published and had books published and some critical acclaim, but I can still learn. So holding both again. So I wanted to, I told Deanna that I was hoping to have this be an interactive presentation. And if we were all sitting in a room together, I'd probably have us do some creative movement, but we're not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to be having us take maybe 7 minutes to do an ekphrastic. And I'm not sure, I can't see all of your faces at the same time right now. I'm not sure how many of you have done ekphrastic writing before, but I find it a very fun blend of the written word and looking at visual art. An ekphrastic is a vivid verbal description of a visual image. The response can be in prose or poetry, and it's often dramatic. Contemporary ekphrastic writing is done in response to a painting, photograph, or object. Using what we know about the creative process, I'm going to have us take about 7 minutes to observe and respond in writing to the photo I'll show you on the next slide. Before I switch to the next slide and have us start the writing, are there any questions just about what we're doing right now? And I guess maybe if you do have a question, put it in the chat, and maybe Leigh Hall, you could let me know. Thank you. All right, I'm going to have us go on. So I'm going to switch to the next slide. It's a photo I took showing you that I really do love flowers and color a lot. And I have a clock in front of me. I'll give us about 7 minutes. When we're done with this, Leigh, with your permission, I'll have people let us know in the chat box that they have something to share, because I'd like for people to be able to not share the entire piece of writing you may do, but a little bit of it, or please share what was it like for you to do this. Okay, so we're gonna go on, and I'll ask that I'll stop talking for a bit. We take about 7 minutes. I'll give you a 1-minute warning before we're done. And just do some free writing to this, and don't shut yourself down at all. Just go in whatever direction you feel like. It may be prose, poetry, whatever. I'm letting you know you have about 1 more minute. And if you have something you'd like to share, can you just let Leigh know in the chat? And Leigh, I'll have you be the traffic director if you don't mind.
How do we tell you that we have something to
If you
say?
put something in the chat, so if you just put a little note in
In
the
the
chat
chat.
and just say, I have something I'd like to share.
Where is the
Oh,
chat box?
Um, on my screen right now, I think because I'm one of the presenters, it's at the box. If you go below the photo, do you see a little caption?
I've lost my screen. Oh, there. I've lost my screen totally. I've gone out.
Well, Jenny, do you have something you'd like to share?
Yes. Can I speak it now? And then
Yes, yes.
there is so much beauty to behold in a simple flower cerulean sky. Nature's bounty that we pass every day in one form or another and find no time to take it in. A gift for all for those who see or take the moment, a loss for those who find not the time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love the touch of the cerulean sky, that you were that specific with the color, and a good reminder to slow down and notice that beauty. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ashley and Anne both have something to share.
Go ahead. Ashley?
Okay. Glorious bed of flowers, royally set before the sky, scented splendor on a breeze, warmth of the sun reaching higher, clouds wave, petals whirl, grass sways, bees hum as they work, crickets sing from the leaves, and butterflies dance across the sky. Symphonic ecstasy.
Wow, I couldn't help but hear. I've been doing so much with poetic devices lately, so much alliteration. So you had so many S words in there, and that feeling of it moving and the hum. You caught the scene quite well. Anne, is there Leigh? Was
Yes,
there? Yes.
yes. Sorry, my
That's
husband
okay.
is here. Purple blossoms reaching toward the cirrus sky, casting their narrow petals outward, reaching between the weeds for space to showcase their independent beauty, while anchored with naked stalks. Leaves adorn the upper branches, gather sustaining sunlight, reaching, reaching.
Wow. I love that in this image, they are reaching up, and I like that the naked beauty. I really enjoyed listening to that. Thank you for sharing that. And the cirrus sky, right? You said cirrus
I
cloud?
think so. I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah,
sure
nice
about the
job.
names of clouds.
Yeah, the specificity that folks are including, I love it. Is there anyone else?
Anya wants to share.
Okay.
Okay.
Tanya.
I lay down on the soft earth beside a cluster of purple daisies, bowing to the morning's breeze. I pick a few to fill a vase, begging to be fed flowers whose departed blooms make potpourri.
I love that you put the speaker in the poem or the writing on the ground, and that was where I found myself going as well. And the vase, I think you said the vase begging to be filled. I really nice perspective. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I'll share, Leigh.
Yes, good.
These lovely flowers make me smile. So I sat and watched them for a while. Because I am a porphyrophile, they move gently with the breeze, their pollen causing me to sneeze. What is a porphyrophile, you say? I love purple and wear it every day.
I love that there are people, I believe there are people among us who are born to rhyme and they just do it so naturally. That's amazing. That was amazing. Even your humor about sneezing from it. Thank you, Leigh.
I could say something.
Yes, Martin.
Okay. I never thought of creativity in the same veins in which you presented it. It's always been there, but it's never been there. So I'm just going to read you some of the
Oh, sure. Yes.
notes that I took, as well as a more directive thing.
Excellent.
Contrast, interaction, work together, force together, separate and join. And where does it go? Can it be broken? Can it be joined? Is it in the future for all to be together, or it is in the future for all to be divided? Life is not simple. Life is not happy. Life is not sad, but all come together. And the human brain, and in the human brain, but it both creates and solves the problem.
Martin, are you a poet? Or are you a prose writer with your genre?
I don't know.
Because
I've done some poetry,
yeah.
and it seemed to be fun and good and nice, and I enjoyed it. But I've written a lot of science-based books,
Mhm.
and many articles and a lot of writing all through. Well, let's see, I'm 87 now, so that makes it about 70 years of of writing, and uh, it's been a way of life with me
Mhm.
to
What
be
you
able
share.
to do things, create things,
Mhm.
and write and write about them.
Yeah, yeah. And what you shared with us right now has a definite poetic sense to it, but you're holding paradox really well. You're
Yeah,
holding two things. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
yeah. Well, that's what I think that you did with creativity.
Great. That's wonderful. If there's no one else to share in this part, we'll open it up to questions and epiphanies, any ahas.
And I suggest that you close
Yes.
and that way everybody can see everybody.
Okay. And I'm going to, that would be really good. Oops.
Would you say that again?
I think there we go.
Oh, no,
Okay, so that's good. I'm still here. I just was wondering if there are any questions or epiphanies, any ahas.
well, yeah. The functional, the basic thing is the apparent separation of intensity of things that you're doing, and the realization of the connection, and then putting them together and winding up with a solution.
Mm-hmm. Which sounds like you're thinking of the creative process as well, because when we think about the creative process, there's always a problem, and this is true in areas of science as well as visual art and writing, so forth. And we have to incubate. right? It's you're thinking about it while you're sleeping, while you're out taking a
Yeah.
walk, and then there's that aha, and you get to work solving it. And then there's always standing back to see, did I do what it was I thought I did?
The
Can I do it
connection
better?
is the achievement that you have made, and having the ability to express that
Yeah.
in writing or in poetry.
Yes.
Yeah. Been a very interesting presentation.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yes, Harry.
Um, I really enjoyed your presentation. It's very interesting, this whole concept of creativity. And it made me think about friends that are published authors and workshops I've taken. There's one friend in New York that did a workshop, and she was talking about, she had written a book called Lost, and it was about searching for this lost woman in I think it was on the Olympic Peninsula, and she had a character that was tracking her, trying to find her, and she had no idea, how this happened. And she had described this ex-Marine who was, he was a professional tracker, and she had him behaving in ways that she assumed he would act in. And when she actually talked to someone that was a tracker, she was very surprised to find that she was right on.
Hmm. Hmm.
And she had also written something else about a character. I forget what it was. It was something of postal service or something where she had no knowledge. But anyhow, she talked about the spirituality of creativity, and I think that happens with all of us, that you're working on something and all of a sudden something comes into your mind from the spirit world, and you have no idea where it came from.
It's interesting, the balance of, and your willingness to be open to the intuitive parts of yourself, sort of like I knew it without actually knowing how I knew it.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
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 You're in the zone when that happens.
Yes. Yes. Tanya.
Yes, and I also think that takes a lot of courage to be open to the moment.
Yeah.
And to take those risks that creative people have to take.
I agree with you. Deanna.
I have a comment and a question.
Yeah.
The comment is that I'm sure many of you have heard this from others when you display your creativity, whether it's a poem or a painting, and they'll say, "Oh, I could never draw a straight line if you asked me." Or they would say, I'm just in awe of what you have produced. And it seems like there's been, for whatever reason, historically, um, a belief that they're not creative. And if you talk to them and draw them out a little bit, you see how they are creative. It may not be in drawing, it may not be in poetry, it may be in cooking, it may be in, um, any number of things. And I find that so unfortunate that people have closed down the idea that they're not creative. That's my comment.
So pause for a sec before you go into to the next thing. Deanna, what you're saying is really, really important, because I do believe that creative impulse, that creative person lives in all of us, and it's important to nourish and nurture that part. My husband is a retired IT person. He was a computer programmer. But man, he paints in flowers. He creates gardens that are just amazing. They're very beautiful. And he's toying with the ideas all the time of what goes with what and how can I fix it? So it's this incredible creativity. The other thing, Deanna, is I've worked with children a lot during many years of my life. If you study creativity and you go into it, very often, the shame that I was reading about, sharing with you what shuts down creativity, is if a child has been told, no, that's the wrong way, or you did it wrong, you're coloring out of the lines, which just immediately shuts it down. Children will be incredibly creative naturally until if they're in public school until about fifth or sixth grade, when they get to a point of being very, very frustrated with not being able to replicate something, not being able to sketch something in a way that they have in their mind. And then as the age that many people shut down on visual arts creativity. Um, so it is really important to take good care of that part of ourselves and others. And you have,
Yes, and to piggyback on that, I'm sure Anne can relate to this. We're both prior kindergarten teachers, and the creativity, I mean, they go at that easel with the paints, and man, they don't give a care. They're just out there using color, using movement, using strokes. And as you said, when it becomes a matter of being able to draw realistically, they think if they can't, that's the end of it. It's so here's my question. Um, Lately, there has been an understanding that some people are HSPs, highly sensitive people. And I'm wondering what you think about creatives being highly sensitive people. You talked about that a little bit in the suffering section.
yeah.
Um, and how much creatives draw upon spirituality.
I'm intrigued by the latter part of your question, and I don't know except that it's probably a very personal thing. I mean, the whole aspect of spirituality. Highly sensitive people, and it's funny that you brought this up because my husband and I are currently reading a book on empaths, which empaths and highly sensitive people, they're not one and the same, but there are some similarities. And um, I don't have the statistics to respond to your question, like how many creative people are highly sensitive people. Anecdotally, I would say many or most are, because you have to, in order to be creative, you are subjecting yourself to stuff all the time that's in your environment. Certainly with poetry and with painting, and I would say with music as well, probably movement, probably dance, that being sensitive is integral to what it is you're doing, to the way you express yourself through your art. But it's anecdotal. I'm not sure. Susan?
Yes. I was curious about the contrast, the way I approached that compared to some of our wonderful poet people here. I started with the colors and the contrast of that, and I'll just read it to you. I love the colors, violet with yellow, straw-like, right up the middle in view, right up close and personal. Those are right up close and personal. The violet against the blue sky, I was sitting next to those flowers. I smell the green beneath me. I contrast the blue sky above, and it's uh, cirrus clouds as well. I chose that. Wispy announcing to me, and I started to get into a little more of what I would call prose. Whispered to me, fair weather is here to stay for a while at least. And in this spot, I realized it was the north. You were in the north. Of course, it was a good guess, right? But you can touch the sky in the north, whereas in the south, you can't touch this. So I'm like, I was sort of measuring that in scientific ways before I would get into the, poetry type of, I thought that was interesting on my part compared to our, maybe there've been poets for a long time or just starting to write myself, so.
Well, and you were very highly observant.
Yeah.
Right. You are really observing the image and rather than, okay, this reminds me of this or that. Are you a painter?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah. But that is interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I love that what you said. I'm still processing it that in the north you can touch the sky.
Yeah.
In the south you can't. So I love just kind of thinking about what that might mean.
Yeah, if you notice when you are up north, the sky's right there. It's close. It feels closer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I'm in the south, it's farther away until the clouds come in. Then it feels close.
Yeah, go ahead, Anne.
Well, I have to piggyback on what Deanna said. As a kindergarten teacher, I think we had, because we were creative people ourselves without really knowing it, enhanced that in the children. I recall I had mothers come to help because I had, 25 in the morning and 25 in the afternoon with a very open and involved learning station approach. And I had a pediatrician mother who rearranged her schedule because she wanted to come. And after the session, she came up to me with tears in her eyes and she held my hands and she said, I learned so much today about enhancing the self-worth of a child by just watching you. I was shocked because that was intuitive and nothing I realized I was doing. But I think having the arts and music in school is just so important for the creative process. And teachers who accept children as they are and help them to grow. And I worry today about all of this texting, that who's going to talk to somebody and find out where their creative passion is, if it's just short texts and not conversation. I think we're in a trouble because of that.
I think you raised some really, really important issues here. I've been involved with a book group as well. We do a lot, we focus on environmental issues. And for those of you down south or in Florida, you hopefully, when it's not super hot, you're outside a lot. It's really important for children now to get outside, to do things one-on-one with nature, as well as to have some face-to-face conversations. I think with the abundance of AI and we're not getting rid of technology. So texting and video games and social media will continue to be there. But for those of us who have interactions with children, to give them as many like real life, get them out, let them see a tree, let them smell a flower, let them have a simple garden. It's really important. Yeah, go ahead, Ashley.
I would say my dad says this a lot, and he'll even get on me sometimes, and I get too wrapped up in life. He says, and he worries about that with my boys. they're 21 and 17. And he said the younger generation is not learning how to be still and contemplate their navel, like to ruminate in their own heads. They're constant and they've got input coming from all over. But I will say that most of the creative people that I have known, and I feel I'm in that category, we have a bit of, because I think we watch any child, they all have this beautiful creativity within them. They can imagine anything out of thin air. And they lose that as they're in school a lot of the time, and just in life in general, where they're told, oh, don't do it that way, do it this way. They're constantly being kind of drugged down a path, whereas if we give them more latitude, they will find a way that works for them and that it enables the creativity. But instead, those of us that come out on the other side, still very in touch with our creative selves, I think there's a stubborn streak in us, where we've refused to kind of conform and we're resilient. And probably that is because maybe we are a little more sensitive to our interactions with other people and the environment around us. And usually there was someone along the way, like a wonderful teacher,
Yes.
that inspired us to keep up the fight, to not give up and just kind of like conform.
Absolutely. And I think Maslow's theory of self-actualization he had resilience in the top part.
Yeah.
Resilience is really important. As a teacher, I did a lot of leadership, peer leadership. So I was involved with educational leadership a fair amount, and resilience was something we spent a lot of time thinking about. So the role of developing assets in the lives of children and teenagers, helping them to be resilient. Just having one other adult, it can be a teacher, it can be a grandparent, it can be a neighbor, to say, yeah, I believe in you. I see this amazing quality you have, or this amazing talent. That's all it takes sometimes, and you would be surprised later to learn the important role that you may have had in someone's life, but to still look for those opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
I see Leigh's hand and then Martin.
Problem now is that it's coming from the top down. The Venice Musicale applies for grants, and our mission is from K through 12, to give scholarships for musical talent. And usually they're violin, piano, musical instruments. Occasionally we get a singer. But this year, there were no grants for that. They were only for people who were, hurting financially and needed food and shelter, which is, yes, definitely that's important. But there was nothing for the arts of any kind. And that is reflected here in Englewood. Our Englewood Arts Center is being closed.
Oh. Sometimes grassroots, even this is, I'm not going to get into a lot of political stuff, but this group right here, you are a community, even though some of you are in other states, you are a community. It's really important that we do sometimes small collectives and grassroots efforts. So if there's a way to maybe thinking out of the box to bring the arts or to bring music, to bring some area of creativity in, it's still really important, regardless of what may be talking points in society right now. It's still really, really important. Martin.
Yeah, this brings up something in my past that I was very interested in, but I wasn't old enough to really make it understand it or do it, but I did it. My first job after college was as a teacher at junior high school, ninth grade, and I taught ninth grade general math. And then that was because you couldn't, if you went into the seventh grade, you took general math, and in the next step up, you took um, uh, you know, I'm getting old. I'm missing things. But anyway, I wound up teaching in the ninth grade general math, which is where you had to go if you didn't pass any of the other things. And then you could that school couldn't get a special teachers what do you call it?
Special educator.
Special education. Yeah. So I was put into 3 units of that. And the special education kids, they did not have, they were not in any way working well with understanding and functionality, but they were creative. And we would do things like building a farm so that they could understand how food was made and where it came from and what they did. And going through driving things, how to drive a car, and not physically, but just mentally, what you had to know to be able to do that in ways that would help them to understand who they were and how they were. And in fact, 2 of the guys there made more money than I did because they helped their father, who was a fisherman, and they did really well with that. But anyway, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that understanding what you're doing and where you're going the requires some creativity that you may not have. But even without that, you may be very successful academically because you're learning what people are teaching you without a creative measure in it. And even if your brain does not carry the intelligence that, for whatever reason, that you should have, you can still be quite creative with it. But you have to have that spark that pushes you in that direction. And I think that's what a good teacher has. I only taught for 1 year. That was all I could take.
But listening to what you're saying, I think that's exactly right, that you had students who they had not had that academic success. So you met them in a different place. You still had the goal of hoping they would get to a
Yeah,
certain
you would
place.
teach them.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you ended up needing to learn and flex a little bit to meet them where they were and help them get there, which was creativity on your part and theirs.
Yeah,
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 Harry.
yeah. But they had learned that success was memorization and route.
Yeah.
And
Martin, I can add an anecdote to what you're saying. I was teaching a special ed class at one time, and some of the kids had very high IQs, and some did not. But at one point, I was teaching how to identify. I'm a biology teacher, so I was trying to teach identification of winter trees by the buds on the twigs. So I passed out all these twigs to the kids and trying to identify the maples from the ash and the hickory and so forth. And so the one girl said, "Mr. Barnes, come over here." And she handed me the twig and she said, "Mr. Barnes, this bud's for you."
yeah, creativity.
And at one point in this group, I'm not sure if the person is still present, but you were talking about arts fusion and a group, I think, in a group with autism. That could be a very wonderful connection for your group. In my years of teaching, of course, I had children with autism and a regular public school classroom, and the creativity and areas of expertise that some people who aren't typically identified as, oh, you're a wonderful this or you're a wonderful that. If it's amazing and it's worthwhile. So I hope you'll as a group go a little deeper and see if that might be a good fit. This has been really fun for me. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Love.
There's a different,
Well, it's been
different
fun for
perspective.
us too. And I think looking at all those descriptions and seeing ourselves portrayed there was eye-opening. So I thank you for all of that. And this was just such a thought-provoking and stimulating, creatively stimulating talk. And you did it so well and was so organized. And you brought us from a place of our own understanding of creativity to a much, much broader one. And I, for one, really benefited by it. So I thank you, Leigh.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we'll call this meeting over and we hope we'll see you all soon.